You can listen to The Professional Left on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for March 15th, 2019. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where veto is not a sentence. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal.
Hi, Driftglass.
Hey, Blue Gal.
Tough week.
Yeah.
Tough week. Tough day. We
Yeah.
are recording on Friday.
Yep.
And, it's another massacre.
Yep.
Crazy white person with the addition of being an internet troll who apparently, although I have not watched it and I do not recommend anyone go looking for it if it's still up, videotaped his massacre in Christchurch, New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another day waking up to something like this. And I am so sorry for the victims of this, and sorry that we as a world can't seem to do anything about guns, toxic masculinity, crazy people having weapons of mass destruction yet.
And white supremacy.
I'm still hopeful that someday we can do something about this.
Well, we know what the signifiers are, don't we?
Absolutely.
Not hard to identify these people. This was true when Timothy McVeigh blew up the Murrah Federal Building.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, what does this guy have? What are all the signals this guy's sending? And they're all there. They're not terribly hard to spot. It doesn't mean every crazy ranting anti-government white supremacist idiot is a potential spree killer, but it does mean that all of these guys have two or three things in common that can either be inflamed by someone in, let's say, the White House encouraging it, or tamped down by someone in the White House urging calm and compassion and peaceful coexistence. And that's...
and all of these things happened when Barack Obama was president as well, and were inflamed by his very existence.
Right.
I was reading an article in Sojourners about racism. It's in the new issue of Sojourners, really connecting white supremacy and violence. And this of course was written before this happened. Mm-hmm. Connecting it, because this is a religious publication, connecting it with Satan, but connecting it with denial, and that Satan wants you to pretend that he doesn't exist or ignore his existence, mm-hmm. so that he can work. And this belief that, oh, we're over racism now. Yeah. Oh, we're over, our society is over hatred and over homophobia, Islamophobia, white supremacy. We're moving forward, onward and upward. If the past decade hasn't been a smack in the face to that denialism, we've got so much work to do to love more for every hate, as the old hymn says, and to be sane about guns. This is the point, is we're being called to tamp down greed, and everything we do, it's all about that. Is really, if we could do that, if we could solve the problem of greed in this world, so many smaller problems would be solved. I am so grateful that today, while we are mourning and feeling enraged by what happened in New Zealand, young people around the world are striking for a better environment. And the turnout is massive. And I can call them kids because they're my kids' age, are impatient, as young people often are.
Yeah.
But have a reason to be.
Yes, they do.
And it's time to combine that youthful impatience with the urgency of the problem for our climate.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful that I saw that today, because that made me think, okay, it's not all going to hell.
Yeah. Well, and they have to live here after we're gone.
Right.
And that really is the bright dividing line
Mm-hmm.
between people who just don't give a shit about what happens to the world after they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
They're solipsists, they're narcissists, and they don't care. They want to use it all up now, burn through it all now, kill anybody who stands in the way of them using everything up now, die in
I think there are very
comfort.
few people who would admit to that, however.
Yeah. Well, is it? Yeah. Well, it's a,
they don't want to change or be inconvenienced. And so the
at the
Green New
bottom,
Deal is going to inconvenience them.
right.
Right.
And at the bottom of that is, I don't want to give up anything for anybody.
Right.
Especially people who are not my problem. And the future in their minds is not their problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a, really, like I said, a clear, bright dividing line between groups of people who think, yeah, we are stewards. We're here for a short time. What does middle child always say? We're here for a good time, not a long time. Which is good. Might as well be the American capitalist motto.
Yeah.
And that we are obligated to pass along the place we inherited from our mothers and fathers in as good or better shape than we found it in. And we are failing in that mission pretty spectacularly. Yeah. And these younger people are going to have to live in the mess we leave behind. I think what you're also hearing, since you were talking about loving more than hating,
mm-hmm.
you're hearing the sound of that large middle third of the country who doesn't want to believe these are real problems.
Yeah.
Slapping the snooze alarm over and over again, harder and harder, and holding the pillows over their ears, not wanting to believe that things are as bad as they are.
Or that 20 to 30% of their country is this bad.
Well, that's the problem. The problem is they cannot accept that as true, because the immediate corollary action would be, and now that you're aware of the problem, now that you're aware of the fire burning and the children in the burning building, you now have choices to make. You can either look away and take responsibility for doing nothing, or you can try to save them. And they don't want that moral burden thrust upon them. They don't want to have to take responsibility for their own fucking country. They want to, and it's just easier to pretend that none of this is going on, everything is a one-off, everything is a fluke, or that no matter how horrifying the right behaves, the left is just as bad.
Yeah,
so
well,
I
think there is a fear to take a stand against evil is exactly what this article in Sojourners was about, which is if and when I say love more for every hate, when I quote that hymn, I'm not talking about, if we just love everybody, then we could all get along and we can all go on forward. And because, like, as you say, that is a cop-out. That is a fear of controversy, a fear of making a stand against evil. And that's exactly what this article was saying. That's when Satan wins, is when you're terrified of making a stand against evil. And they point out the moment when Barack Obama stood in front of that church in South Carolina and sang Amazing Grace. That was one of the most terrifying moments for Satan, because all of a sudden people really saw the black church and all of the suffering and all of the shootings and all of the cop shootings, Black Lives Matter, saw that, this really happened. This shooting of people in church during a prayer meeting because they're black really happened. This is what white supremacy does. And you can't be neutral. You can't say, well, if we just love everybody, because this evil occurred. And if you hide from that instead of standing up to it, you're fighting for, if you don't take the side of good, you're standing with evil. That's what's going on here. And we all have to make a choice. Are we going to say, well, I know that guns are bad and everything, but the NRA gives so much money to causes that I care about. And after all, Democrats murder babies on the operating table, and you're going to slip into that lie and slip into whatever lie it is that lets you keep your privilege and your power and your money. You're fighting with Satan. That's it.
Well, and I had that a little bit of just a casual brushing up against experience of that, which I'm not going to drag you into, I promise. listening to Stephanie Miller this week.
Uh-huh.
I'm only going to bring it up because she had on, I forget the woman's name. She's a best-selling author. She's running for president.
Oh, Marianne Williamson.
Marianne Williamson.
From California.
Yeah.
And she's running for president, right?
Yes, she is. And
is she running as a Democrat or is she running as an independent?
I don't care. Because it was Stephanie Miller has come a long way. She has not gotten over her fear of boycotts, because if you boycott Rush Limbaugh, it's going to take money out of her pocket, and I understand that that's a problem. I do understand that.
Right.
But she has come fully on board with, oh my fucking God, Chuck Todd, what the hell is it with this both sides bullshit?
Right.
It's like the scales fell from her eyes. I don't know when, maybe a year, maybe 2, maybe 3, but it suddenly became so clear, probably during the Trump campaign, that, oh my God, both siderism is a real thing, and it's a real problem, and it's the cause of everything else.
And a lot of people have caught on to where we were 6 years ago.
Well, or 14 years ago.
14 years ago.
I got a blogiversary coming up. It's been 14 years.
This month is Drift Class's blogiversary, and is it 14 years?
14 years. I will have done this longer than I've done anything, almost anything.
Wow.
Except personal things that I'm not going to talk about on this without a paid subscription. But so she's on there talking about exactly this, except she's getting it 100% wrong. And it's just, maybe the smug liberals drove the people into Donald Trump's arms. It really is both sides. And you can just hear, because she's a friend of Stephanie Miller. She's a big time.
Well, she's a big deal. Wealthy. She's a wealthy Californian who has lots and lots of friends.
Right.
I have a couple of her books. Mm-hmm. Some of what she talks about in terms of spiritual growth, I agree with.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of politics, in terms of she's going to want to reach the audience that is as broad and generalist as possible.
And there's 2 ways to do that. You can be completely inoffensive. You can write children's books where little kids learn valuable lessons about sharing cows.
Yes,
that's
fine.
Right. You can be a train that makes it around the bend and you accomplish something, and good for you. Or if you're going to dip your toe into politics, the way to be as completely inoffensive as possible is to equally offend both sides. Is to, no matter what Republicans do, it's the smug liberals who are really just as bad. Don't you think so, Stephanie? And you can hear Stephanie Miller grinding the enamel off her back teeth, trying not to say, fuck you. That is everything I have done on this show is exactly the opposite of because this woman wanted to be serious about the problems on both sides and how we need to, rise above and love each other and love, not hate. And that's great. What happens when one side is deeply committed to hatred? Well, it's the smug liberals are just as bad, Stephanie.
Yeah, right.
And her audience, and just based on what I could observe through social media, all turned off the radio at the same time and all contacted her through whatever means, please stop doing this. Please. Yep. And I know she's a big shot. She lives near you. She's wealthy. She has a lot of powerful friends, and you don't want to piss her off by calling her out on your show. But oh my holy God, why are you letting this person who clearly believes exactly the wrong shit based on your own words? Why are you putting her on the air? And now that she's on, why aren't you pushing back even slightly? And the answer is, because I don't want to piss off a powerful, rich person who's sort of in my corner.
And who has a lot of followers who are totally devoted to her. And part of this, too, I think, is the regionalism problem that we have in this country now, even more so than we had maybe 30 or 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. California is a world unto itself politically. Yeah. The West Coast and the East Coast are far more liberal than the rest of the country.
Yes.
California essentially doesn't have a Republican Party anymore, and has so many different voices within the left of center that they can afford to fight with each other.
Right.
And I always say this when Californians write into our show, and they do often, and we love them and glad to talk to them. But moving a California politician to the far left is fantastic. Go for it. Yeah. Absolutely do as much as you can to make your values fit the politics of the place you live. There are people in other parts of the country who write us even more often than the Californians do, who are little blue dots in a very big red state,
Yes.
whose customers for their particular business are Republicans. And they can't have a bumper sticker on their car because they will literally lose their livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
And I have just as much sympathy and respect for those folks as I do for those who are trying in California to make liberal values more liberal. That's it matters. That where you are matters.
I think I don't know if we might be talking past each other just a little bit.
I don't think we are, because I understand what you're saying about Marianne Williamson, right, that she's trying to market a brand.
She is
in California and around the country of, let's realize that this both-siderism, and she's going to push both-siderism because
that's what sells.
She wants some slightly conservative people. I mean, a Bible thumper evangelical is not going to buy her New Age books, but a lot of people will who would otherwise vote Republican, and she doesn't want to piss them off. But it is a question as to why Stephanie Miller decided to have her on the show.
Again, I promised I wouldn't beat this to death, and we will move on. I would like to say that
we've got advertisers.
We do. They're lined up around the block, Blue Gal. If you want to experiment in how far left you can move in California, that's great. Nobody who's trying to move the party left in California is making a both sides do it argument at all.
That's true. You're right. You're right.
The only people who make the both sides do it argument are media hacks who are interested in selling the maximum number of dick pills or books or whatever to a vast number of credulous idiots who are terrified of making a moral judgment about one party or the other, who want to stay above it all, want to pretend that there is no racism or it's racism on both sides, but certainly nothing they would ever have to take a side on. And there are enough of those cowards out there to fill auditoriums, and to fill churches, and to fill stadiums. I'm sorry, that's an auditorium. And she's selling her message to them. She's selling the same message Howard Schultz is selling. Which is,
I was going to compare the two. Absolutely.
And the idea that she would get any oxygen from anyone on the left is appalling to me, because it's just like, why the fuck are you putting Howard Schultz in a dress on your show when 2 minutes ago you were saying Howard Schultz is a putz and he shouldn't be? Well, because money. Because I'm afraid of her cutting off my access to rich people. And I want to make her happy because she's sort of in my camp. And the one of the great luxuries...
But see, she can afford to do that because of California. Well, that was my point.
There you go.
You can call liberals shrill and be talking about a totally different group of people if you're just talking about Californians than if you're talking about the nation as a whole.
And we live in the real world. And because we have no sponsors at all, we have this incredible...
And we don't give a...
We have this incredible, we have this liberty to say whatever we really want, whatever really is on our mind. We don't have to appeal to anyone. We don't have to mollify anyone. We don't have to sit here and say, Howard Schultz, that's the smartest thing I've ever heard anyone say today. David Brooks, you've got a bunch of cool ideas. Let's talk about them at the next Aspen Institute. No, we don't have to do any of that shit because we have...
Driftglass, I want to read our first new sponsor. We have two new sponsors, and we are saying farewell to one.
Yes.
That has made it out into the real world.
Yes, please go ahead.
I'm so sorry. You say you don't have time to listen to all your favorite podcasts, and listening to the We Hate Everybody podcast at double speed makes your favorite angry dorm floor bros sound like Minnie Mouse, detracting from their message of intellectually shallow nihilistic doom. Well, friends, you can cut down your podcast listening time by 60, 70, or even 80% with Likeaway, the clever little app that eliminates gratuitous likes from your favorite podcasts and SiriusXM radio programs. Download now with the offer code English Motherfucker. Do you speak it? And we will also include Right Be Gone, the add-on that edits out the word right from the end of every goddamn sentence. Likeaway, because you don't have time for this shit. And the Driftglass wrote this, and he is showing his age.
I am. I absolutely am. I'm quoting Pulp Fiction.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Right.
You don't have time for this shit?
No. English Motherfucker, do you speak it? No, this really, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of radio when I'm doing whatever else.
I listen to virtually no podcasts during the week. Very few.
I sample many. and I write up some. And I got to say, there was a point at which it's like seafood. When you're young, you can eat all the shellfish you want. But eventually the toxins build up in your body to the point where you start having a really severe allergic reaction to crawfish and lobster and scallops and so on and so forth, which is why you and I don't really indulge in those things at all.
That's right. After a certain age, we couldn't do it anymore.
Couldn't do it.
That's right.
And after a certain point, if you hear someone use the word like 7 times in every goddamn sentence, I just turn it off. I can't listen to it. It's like,
We sound like an old man.
I know. Right?
Move on.
Right? Right?
Right?
Isn't that right?
Right?
I'm just saying,
right?
having done this for 9 years, take some free advice from the old people. Stop saying like every third word, because it really is distracting. I mean, it's incredibly distracting. And stop weakening your sentences by ending every one of them with right. Right? Are you right? Because again, after 4 minutes of that, that's all I notice. Anyway.
And that's a broadcasting thing.
Yes.
I think friends that talk to one another can talk to one another any way they want. But broadcasting, you've got to kind of sharpen it up.
It's pretty
or say it and edit it out like we do.
Yeah, believe me. There's about 1 billion likes on the floor after Blue Gal's done with his podcast. And
it's true.
Usually 30 minutes of David Brooks rants on I just keep those for myself.
I cut all that out now. Yeah.
We have a second sponsor. We'd also like to welcome to the Pro Left sponsorship family, Gary's Pencils. Like you, Gary and his partner Gil, hey everybody, we're sick and tired of paying crazy high prices for over-designed pencils with all kinds of fancy add-ons that nobody needs. But how could these two young entrepreneurs hope to compete in a market dominated by Big Pencil? Well, just outside the sleepy Latvian village of Kraslava, they found the answer. A venerable 120-year-old pencil factory that had survived World War I, World War II, and the fall of the Soviet Union. Using the $100 million they've been saving for a vacation to Brussels, Gary and Gil bought the Zimulu Nam's pencil factory and the indentured servant contracts of all the employees from some anonymous Russian gentleman, and have now been making affordable pencils for real people ever since. Gary's Pencils trump era quality, Soviet-era prices, and only available online at garyspencils.com.
I'm so glad that's a fake sponsor.
Why? Because it's awfully close to real?
It really is.
Yeah.
And finally, we bid farewell this week to friends at Hello Fascist. It sort of became a real thing this week. As you know, Hello Fascist was on a mission to provide every Trump administration stooge and enabler in America with fresh home-cooked meals with no planning, no shopping, and no one calling you out for your moral depravity in public. Well, mission accomplished. Now there is an app called the 63rd Safe app, which is a real thing. It bills itself as a Yelp-style app for conservatives who need protection from socialist goon squads by identifying which businesses are safe for conservatives. There's an update here. 63rd Safe has been taken down due to serious security issues.
Yes, I looked that up today. I thought, because we're prepping for the show, and we actually thought this thing up. This Hello Fashion, we got a lot of calls and feedback, and
a lot of people let us know about it.
Thought it was pretty cool, and then it turned out, we won't actually do meal prep, but we will map out a Yelp-like app that'll let you know.
Well, it's more of a Green Book app,
it is.
in a very racist way, and the other thing that Ten Grain pointed out at his place at Mock Paper Scissors is that they didn't rate the food.
No.
They rated whether it was open carry or not in the restaurant, which is really a bad idea. Once again, on the morning after a horrible massacre, here we have an app showing you which restaurants you can take a gun into. This is really indicative of how insane the right is. That's
and I will just say this.
Apparently they did have to take this down because announcing where it's quote unquote safe to be a racist and a gun owner there were restaurants that didn't want you to put them on there.
Well, and I remember back when open carry was, you could carry a beer from Glasscott's to Alex's restaurant next door and drink it there. And that's no longer, because that was a thing. You could get a bottle of wine, you get a beer from one restaurant, you could take it to the other. That was the entire controversy of taking one thing to the next. But these weak snowflake assholes don't feel safe anywhere unless they're packing.
Yeah.
And they want to know they can go to a restaurant, not have some liberal goons make them feel bad about being racist. there's a place for that, and it's called Alabama.
It's amazing, though. I lived in Alabama. All three of my children were born in Alabama. So suburban Birmingham is white and has McMansions and is as bland as can be. Mm-hmm. And they have learned in Birmingham that the racism doesn't bring tourism to the city. Mm-hmm. And the right-wing gun shit doesn't bring tourism and bring conventions to the city. And that's what they want, is money. It's money green. Birmingham has a black mayor now for, I think, the first time since Reconstruction. I don't judge me on that. I'm not quite sure. But certainly during the entire time I lived in Alabama, which was 14 years, we did not have a black mayor. And so there is a real push to at least present the city as progressive in terms of we're forward-looking, we're not racist, we're not a bunch of, right-wing yahoos. You can bring your convention here and be and not be embarrassed. Mm-hmm. And that's a hard thing to do when you're Birmingham, Alabama, because you got a history down there.
You do,
yeah.
And you can lean into that history if you're smart, and they're trying.
Well, that's it, exactly.
Lean
right.
into it.
Exactly. Well, and they have in my personal opinion, the best civil rights museum in the world. Yeah. Just it's fantastic. You will need to lie down after you've gone through it.
Yeah.
Because it is exhausting to do, but mentally and emotionally exhausting to go through it. But it is remarkable. It is a remarkable thing. Wow. And when you go through it, at the end, there's a window and you're looking out over the 16th Street Baptist Church where the 4 little girls died. That's the end of the tour.
Well, let's take a moment then and say at the, not the end of this podcast, because we're about, we have a minute or two to go. Let's pause for a moment and notice that some things do get better.
Well, but white supremacists were blowing up churches in 1963, so I don't know if things are getting better or not.
No, what I mean is
I don't know.
What I mean is there's a museum.
Yes, there's a museum.
Heart of the Confederacy.
Right.
That memorializes it unsparingly.
Right.
And charges admission to come in.
Yep.
And is a going concern because people are insisting that past not be forgotten.
Exactly.
And they're not afraid to go in the front door. They're not terrified of being lynched on their way out. So
nope.
There is that.
I highly recommend it. If you go to Birmingham, don't miss it. Spend an afternoon and then make sure you have time off because you'll need to rest. But it's fabulous. So in talking about stuff today, Driftglass, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the school admissions scandal?
I think that's a wonderful place to start.
I was thinking about calling this podcast The Privileged Few because there are so many stories here in which privilege is being claimed, whether it's Manafort or Biden or this whole school admissions scandal. There just seems to be a lot of who belongs and who doesn't kind of thing. And I'm not saying Joe Biden is. Yes, I am.
Yeah, you are.
I'm saying he's coming from a place of privilege. Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I know that he comes from Scranton. Okay. Yeah. I'm putting that in there as a condition. But this school admission scandal that seemed to really grab the media's attention because there are 2 TV celebrities or actresses headlining this admissions scandal. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, they're charging them with mail fraud in part. And that is something that's always very interesting to me because the feds are very good at prosecuting mail fraud. They have a system for proving it. And that's why I really believe in vote by mail and hope that we go to that universally because it's easy to prosecute. I think it's much easier to prosecute that as fraud as people in, say, North Carolina, grab all the absentee ballots and try to fraudulently vote for a Republican. It is easy to catch and easy to prosecute that. But this school admission scandal brought out a lot of different discussions. Youngest child came home yesterday, and one of her teachers, who is African American, spoke very eloquently to the class about white privilege and being a Black teacher in a majority Black school where she is one of 20% of the teachers that is of color. And my daughter wanted to talk about that. I had a message from someone, by the way, who was kind of calling me out for using the term Black about my daughter's friends. And I told this person that if I talked with my daughter about it, I would mention it on the show. This person objected to my calling my daughter's friends Black and not using African American. And the thing, as I thought about it, and I was discussing these children in the construct of a discussion about race. I want to make that clear. I talked with her about it because I had recalled that they themselves refer to themselves as Black. And I had remembered that, and I believe that's why I was using that term. I mentioned it to my daughter, and she said, yes, it is perfectly fine to call my friends Black. That is what they call themselves. And the reason they call themselves that is several of them are not African American. Some of them are Dominican. Some of them have Cuban background or come from South America, or their background is somewhere else other than Africa. And so, yes, we've made a decision among my friends that my friends are Black, and they just don't worry about it, because African American isn't the right term for them. And there has been a whole discussion between them about that. But my daughter wanted to talk about this whole kind of privilege thing of what happens when you're affirmative action versus what happens when you buy your way in a fake way versus totally legally buying a building for the school and then getting an admission. Yeah. You know, where does the privilege stop, and how do you do this fairly?
The Rodney Dangerfield method.
The Rodney and this is what I used as my post, was that, it's a really big check that Thornton Mellon gave to the school so he could be a freshman in back to school. My second favorite Rodney Dangerfield movie. The thing is, as I said to my daughter, I personally, Blue Gal, am an affirmative action student. I went to Brandeis, and Brandeis is a Jewish founded school. It was founded by a Jewish concern in 1948 because Harvard at that time did not admit Jewish students. Mm-hmm. This is 1948, not 1848. Okay. Harvard didn't let Jews in 1948.
Harvard, I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't let Jews in because Brandeis was founded at that time as a place of inclusion. Their admissions department works very hard for inclusion of people from different backgrounds, as many admissions departments do. I don't think diversity is a negative thing for an admissions department to look for in a student body. No. You're putting together a freshman class. You want them to not be all the same kind of person. You want to give your students varied backgrounds and friends and different kinds of people so that they can have a varied experience. That is democratization of the college campus. Mm-hmm. So I don't need to make an argument to our audience in favor of affirmative action, I don't think.
No, but I'm pretty sure they're on board with
I'm pretty sure they're okay with this.
But I would like to just take a second, and because I'm smiling in here a dozen yards away from you, at just not at anything that, not the subject matter, but I have a picture in my head of you having a complex discussion about race with youngest child, and youngest child having a complex sort of tribe meeting among all of her friends to decide how they will refer to themselves and why they will do so.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, that's awesome. That's awesome. That is exactly.
Well, it's awesome that a 14-year-old girl would say, but wait, just because my skin is this color, I'm not African American. Right. My background is different than that.
And then what should we do about that? Yeah. Well, let's
how do we
talk about it.
How do we deal with it? Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's not discriminating in any way. That is making a stand for who I am.
Right.
Here's how I want to be referred to as. whatever.
Meanwhile, back at Brandeis.
Meanwhile, yeah. So I went to Brandeis as a little Christian girl from Corn and Cows rural community in Western Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And, had the SAT scores that were on par with every other student who was being admitted. And they didn't lower the standards of the school for me in any way. But I was put in the pile of, here is a person who will bring diversity to the student body.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was affirmative action for sure. These actresses and other people who spent way more than 4 years of tuition to get their children on the rowing team when they didn't row.
Right.
I mean, I just don't understand that stupidity. I just don't understand the level of stupidity that it feels as though they were scammed in a lot of ways. I imagine their attorneys are trying to figure out a way to make it the argument that we were scammed by school administration officials,
Sure. Or
but
somebody.
they were just stupid.
Yeah. Well, there's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah. Stupid people with a lot of money, right?
But
yeah,
what it really does for the umpteen zillionth time,
Mm-hmm.
it pulls the curtain back on the whole farce of meritocracy.
right.
That
Right.
if you just work hard and you just earn it, you'll find your proper place in the world. And you find out, oh, no, the people with money are actively rigging the game so hard that it is no longer sufficient that their kid have just an enormous amount of money and wealthy and famous parents. Those parents now need to bribe them into a school to make sure they have even more privilege.
Right. And I want to recommend to everyone, I know it's been out for a few years and most of you have read it already, Chris Hayes' book, Twilight of the Elites.
Mm-hmm.
He has a whole chapter devoted to the amount of money spent on test prep courses, the amount of money spent getting into the right preschool, because that's a feeder to the private schools in New York City, and that's a feeder to the private high schools in New York City, and that's a feeder to the private schools, colleges in around the country. That it's who you know, it's who you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
And there's a path for rich people that starts at age 3.5.
Yeah.
And getting test prep over and over again and spending $1,500 to be taught at a private business how to write your college essay, how to study for the standardized testing, etc. It's all, there is just a way you can purchase a certain amount of success. So
I will.
It's the stupidity of spending $500,000 to get on the rowing team. It does still boggle me.
Well, I remember I was maybe late teens, early 20s when I bought my dad's car off of him. And it was a shitty car, but it got me where I wanted to go. It was my first car. And he gave me like a little handwritten booklet of what you do. Here's when you change the oil. Here's when you change the tires, and just maintenance. This is how you keep your car running. Yeah. That, in my memory, is the first and only time anyone ever handed me a book explaining how the world works.
Wow. Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
I still have very little idea how the world really works. I mean, I've doped it out over the years, but there clearly is a jet stream, a way to get ahead in the world that if you have enough money, you can buy your way in. And you can buy it. This is evidenced by the idiot in the White House and his inbred, half-wit children.
Right.
Being, the most powerful family in the universe.
Yeah.
There is a way to make your way in the world as a working person, and as a middle-class person that's very quickly evaporating.
Yeah.
And there's no roadmap for how to live a life that isn't the 1950s, get a job, have a job for 30 years, retire from that job, get drunk, go nuts, and die.
Right.
That model simply doesn't exist anymore. That's the only model I ever had for how to. No one ever taught me how to start a business, how to think about starting a business, sort of how politics works in the office.
Right. Oh my God.
I've had jobs just ripped out from under me. I've had careers ripped out from under me. Afterwards, I find out, oh no, you were the most qualified person by like a lot, But this guy got people drunk and was friends with aldermen and was, the drinking buddy of the commissioner. So you were never going to get that job.
Right.
The idea that you were applying for it was part of the deal because we have to have 3 or 4 applicants. But despite the fact that you were overwhelmingly qualified for this job, there was no way on earth you were ever going to get it, and no one's ever going to tell you that.
Well, and add to your understandable ignorance of the way the world really worked in the office place. Add a sexual dynamic with women to that.
Exactly. Yep.
If you want to succeed in this office building, you've got to sleep with X, Y, and Z. You've got to sleep with this person.
Yep.
And that's just you've got to let him touch your ass every day. You've got to let him violate you. And so the Me Too movement is in part, yes, I don't want to be sexually violated, but it's also, we're not going to let the world work this way anymore.
Yes. And
I was a secretary in an office. I was promoted from a job where I was really doing real work in a building. And they said, oh, she's so smart. We'll put her on the top floor and make her a secretary. And I failed at that because I didn't understand that being a secretary in this particular office meant wear a skirt, wear lots of makeup, wear lots of jewelry, wiggle around, always look busy, but don't actually make any decisions or write anything or draft anything or set any policies about even office supplies. No, you don't do any of that. You're just there to wiggle your ass and make yourself look sexy, and so that people that come to that office know that the people that actually do work here, the men that actually do work here, are powerful. That's your job. And so, it's touching all kinds of buttons. That's why it's
really is
setting fire to social media and everywhere else. Yeah, I was impressed with the truth shouter after the Manafort sentencing. This week.
If we could hold all press conferences outdoors on the steps of courtrooms, I would be delighted. Yeah, because why don't you tell everyone what that is?
Well, it was a repeat of the week before, and we're sorry we didn't get to talk about this last week, the terrible disappointment in the judge in the first Manafort sentencing, because we recorded on Thursday afternoon.
Paul Manafort, blameless life.
Yep, blameless life. Yeah, see, speaking of people that get this in this fast lane, right, of privilege, one white man told another man, white rich man, that he lived a basically blameless life apart from this one thing, right?
Yeah, sad, really.
And apart from his mistress, this was the thing this week that just got me in the gut, was Manafort's claim that he's his wife's only caretaker.
Right.
She has some brain injury. And, everyone on Twitter that had any memory at all was like, you mean the wife that he forced into having sex parties and the well-paid housed mistress that Manafort had, in addition to the wife with brain damage that he was having sex parties with Russian oligarchs in
Why don't
Trump
you just
Tower?
pay your mistress to take care of your wife? Problem solved.
While you're in jail.
Yeah.
But this week, the same attorney came out and said the same thing. In both cases, in both sentencings, Manafort's attorney came out, and what did you call him this morning? Fred Flintstone?
Yeah, he got the Fred Flintstone hair.
He's got the Fred Flintstone haircut.
He's basically Paul Manafort, the before photo when you color your hair.
Yeah.
So he's the gray-haired guy who looks in an overstuffed suit, blustery, red-faced, my client. And he couldn't get 3 words out before the truth shouter jumped in.
Yeah, well, it was this no collusion, which I still don't understand why the judge in this case this week didn't haul him back into court and call him in contempt of court for saying things that she did not say, attempting to quote the judge. As we've seen, the judge said no collusion. She didn't say that. That's what the truth-telling protester yelled out while he was talking at the microphone. He said, "You're a liar. You are lying." She didn't say that. And what I loved about that is she didn't say that became the lead-in after his little press conference to all the news coverage.
Right.
Was, notice they said she didn't say that. That's because she didn't say that.
Yeah.
And you just had to have that soundbite be in the reporter's ear for them to then make that the story, not what he was lying.
But as you've mentioned on this podcast once or twice, the only way, last week as a matter of fact, the only way the media, the legitimate media, the CNNs and the MSNBCs used to go after Fox News was via Jon Stewart.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because apparently there was a memo from the guys who, own your ass, that you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to go after them directly. But if you find a bank shot, I'm not saying that Fox News are lying. Jon Stewart is saying it in a very funny way. So let's talk to Jon Stewart now. It's why isn't anyone in the whole fucking Washington press corps standing up at Sarah Sanders' press conference going, you're lying. You're lying. They didn't say that. She didn't say that. You're a liar. Well, because we're not allowed to do that. Really?
That would be rude. Yes.
You're the press. Have you noticed how rude reporters can be? How rude they used to be? Reporters used to go in people's houses and steal pictures of their children who had died so they could put them on the news. Reporters are supposed to be filthy, rotten, drunken bastards who will get the goddamn story and then write it up and go home and sob.
But now they're well-paid lapdogs.
Now they're all there by internships and by the grace of their rich parents. And
right.
I interned under, and I really want to succeed. And how do I get? And this again is privilege showing its ugly head. One Hunter Thompson sitting front and center at a press conference is worth 1 million Beltway reporters.
Yeah,
just saying you're lying. Not asking a question. You're fucking lying. You are fucking lying, and you are embarrassing. You're humiliating your profession. Going down the list of all the press secretaries who weren't fucking liars or who weren't this bad at it, and that would be the lead in the news. Now you would probably be out of a job the next day, but time was when you go across the street from the Chicago Daily News to the Chicago Sun-Times and you get another job. But you're not going to get another job paying what these jobs pay. But this one guy just shouting at a lawyer on the steps in the range of cameras
and ready to do it. Yep.
Did more journalism than the average group of White House press corps reporters do in a month. Yep. And that is pathetic. That is absolutely pathetic.
It is pathetic. And I don't know, I don't really want to dovetail into this topic, but it is abuse. That is what is going on. These are abused people who are taking it every day to keep their status. And it's got to stop. That the politeness police, we can't yell out liar and walk out on her because that's not professional. That's not polite. Mm-hmm. Being a liar is being an abuser. Lying to somebody is abusing them. And if you're going to continue to take that on behalf of us, we're out here in the cornfield, expecting truth from our media, and what we're getting is politeness in the face of abuse.
Right.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be our proxy in the room. Yeah. You're supposed to represent us, not the corporation that owns the television station that you work at. And the idea that, but again, this is another example of roadmaps. Someone handed these people a map of their world, a map of their professions. Here are the do's and don'ts. Here's what you say. Here's what you don't say. And we can all deduce what that map must look like based on your behavior. It's not very hard. Mm-hmm. When you see a blood-drunk ghoul like Bill Kristol being given the red carpet treatment after being completely wrong about everything his whole fucking life on the same station that used to mock Bill Kristol, you know that someone had a little sit-down with the boys and girls at MSNBC and said, okay, here's the deal, kids. Lay the fuck off of him. His paycheck is signed by the same guy who signs your paycheck. So now we're all going to shut up about what a monster Bill Kristol is, right? Right? Yeah. And everyone nods their head, yes, sir. And you get to still go do your story about airplanes and recessions and Donald Trump being a shithead, but you don't touch Bill Kristol because Bill Kristol's on our team now. And the thing is, we can see it. We can see it when CNN invites Kellyanne Conway on the air over and over again to lie to you. And then Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo have a steel cage death match over whether or not we should invite liars on television. Well, who the fuck's running that show?
Right.
She didn't wander on the set.
Who's in charge of CNN is a big question.
Who's in charge?
Yeah.
Oh, well, and Jeff Zucker's in charge, and Jeff Zucker likes to see red ants and black ants fighting. So first we'll have a fight between Chris Cuomo and Kellyanne Conway. Then we'll have Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon fight. That's good. That's ratings. That's a good dollar right there. No, it's a whole bunch of things, but it's not news.
Exactly.
And it's terribly, terribly corrosive. And Jeff Zucker, if he had a soul, should be ashamed of himself. But clearly he doesn't, because this is his work
And
product.
I don't get how then they walk into the office every day saying what a privilege it is and First Amendment this and First Amendment that when they work for a corporation that allows lying to the American people.
Because someone down the road gave them a roadmap. This is how the game is played. This is what you do. This is whose dick you have to suck. This is whose back you have to scratch. This is who it's okay to punch. This is don't you dare touch this person. Those are the rules. And if you follow them and you have a nice haircut and you look good on camera and you're a pleasant person, you can be fucking rich. You can call your mom and dad will be real proud of you, and you can have the world as your oyster. And you know what? You can get to do your stories that you like.
Yeah.
You can get to yell at R. Kelly. Okay, you can do those things. But there's a whole bunch of things that you're not going to be able to do. Just know that going in, because that's bad for the bottom line. And you are now a profit center, and we're not going to let you do those things. If you do those things, there's a lovely journalism class you can go teach at Columbia.
Oh, Columbia.
But you're not
No way. You're not going to be allowed in at Columbia. No.
No.
Some community college as an adjunct, maybe, if we tossed you out. Yeah.
But that really is the overall, and this sort of does lead to Joe Biden, the maddening thing for those of us out here in the cornfield who have memories and eyes and processing brains and can think things through. We can see what you're doing. You're doing it in a big glass box. We can see the things you're avoiding and the things you're refusing to talk about and the things you're skipping over and the people you refuse to push, all of which you should not be doing if you were an actual journalist. So there must be some overwhelming, countervailing force pushing you away from or simply not letting you in the door and only letting in people who are willing to be that bad at that job. There's a reason for it.
So this incredible push in the mainstream media now, 2 years out, to make Joe Biden the Democratic nominee as a balanced candidate is pretty remarkable. I think the Democratic base is going to have something to say about that.
I wrote a long, boring, turgid post this week, but it stuck in my craw for long enough where I had to get it out. It's not just the mainstream media. It's the never-Trumpers, man.
Well, it is the never-Trumpers are deciding, again, that they can choose the Democratic nominee for president, which is hilarious.
It's Biden.
And it's Biden. It's always Biden.
Go right down the list. I went through a whole bunch of examples. I would never consider voting for a Democrat, except maybe Joe Biden. Joe Biden's always been an honest guy. He might has a lot of gaffes, but him I would consider. He's a reasonable guy.
Well, and
he's a centrist
who was the person
kind of guy.
who said that Joe Biden should skip the Democratic primaries and run as an independent?
Oh,
you had something at your blog about that. It was stunning. It was stunning.
Yeah.
And let's say everybody loves Uncle Joe. If Uncle Joe is the nominee, we'll vote for him.
Sure.
If he wants to win a Democratic primary, he's got to stop with this Hickenlooper, I'm going to work with McConnell bullshit. I'm not going to work with McConnell. That's not a selling point for the Democratic base. So,
no, but that's the thing. That is Joe Biden's brand.
It is. Yeah.
I get in trouble, says Joe Biden at the U.S. Conference on Mayors. I read in the New York Times today that one of my problems is if I were ever to run for president, I like Republicans. Okay, well, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. And it's Joe Biden is the guy who thinks that he can sit down with those, with, as I said, the ghost of Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan and drink scotch and solve every problem because we're all backslapping guys here. And the idea that exists anywhere.
That world still exists. Right.
As if it ever did. But even Jonathan Chait this week wrote that the most unrealistic promise a Democrat can make is return to bipartisanship.
Right.
Because Mitch McConnell has already publicly said, before Donald Trump was even a glimmer in the eyes of every racist in America, Mitch McConnell was saying, no, screw it. We're going to fuck over Barack Obama every chance we get. We have no intention of cooperating with him. We want to destroy him. We want to destroy his legacy. We're going to steal his Supreme Court seat. Okay, guess what? Joe Biden, here's my first task for you as candidate. How are you going to get the Merrick Garland seat back from Mitch McConnell?
Right.
He stole it from us. Why don't you go over there, work your magic, work your bipartisan magic, and get Mitch McConnell to give us a Supreme Court seat? Why don't you scurry off and do that? And then come on back. And once you do that, then you can be our president.
Right.
But until you do that, shut the fuck up about making nice with people who want to put a knife in your chest. Now, I know that's your brand, and I know it makes people real happy.
Jim Fest is getting upset.
Well, I will support Uncle Joe. I will campaign for him. I will give him money if he's the candidate for president. I'm telling people right now that the reason he is being lifted up by the Beltway is that he's a both-siderist.
Yeah.
The reason he is beloved by the never-Trumpers is his implicit promise that I will never hold you responsible for how fucked up your Republican Party is. We'll all get together and agree that it was just Donald Trump. He was an aberration of your party. He was a one-off, but everything else is cool. And then we'll all get along, which is, if you remember, exactly the same bargain that Barack Obama made after George Bush nearly destroyed the country. Look, we're not going to, and Nancy Pelosi, we're not going to impeach you. Just let us get in the office. Let us fix all the horrible, horrible fires you left burning, and then we'll all get along again. And the Republican Party said, oh, you're going to let us off the hook? No matter what we do? Fine. We're going to burn this shit down. We're going to stop everything and blame you for doing it and then run against you as a tyrant for trying to govern.
By the way,
and it worked.
Sean Hannity is still running against Hillary as of last night.
Well,
so we just want to let everybody know, in case you missed it, Milwaukee is going to host the 2020 Democratic National Convention.
Yes.
It's happening during my birthday week. The last day of the convention is my birthday, July 16th. Milwaukee is in driving distance from our house. And so we might go. We're not sure. We'll have to do a fundraiser to get there, but we'll let you know. And the thing is, I've been to big events like this. I went to Bill Clinton's first inaugural, and we wound up going home and watching it on the TV at our hotel because it was just easier. So we'll see what happens. There's a lot of we are in touch with people who might have press passes and so forth. So we will see what happens. But it's on our long range planning list of things that might happen.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Beto O'Rourke announced this week that he's going to run for president. And Steve Mnuchin said that he will protect Donald Trump's tax returns.
Well, the title of my post on that is Steve Mnuchin will protect Donald Trump's tax returns until he can't.
Yeah.
And the House Ways and Means Committee is coming hard for those. And it's Bill Pascrell of New Jersey just told Steve Mnuchin, he didn't say buckle up. He said, it's coming. You're not going to get around that. They're going to get the tax.
And a pretty important point to make this week is that this is the week that Donald Trump explicitly threatened violence against his critics.
Yep.
That I have the support of the police, the military, and bikers for Trump. I have tough people. But if they don't play it tough until they go to a certain point, then it'll be very, very bad. And what that is I'm a fascist. And I have the cops, I have the army, and I've got a bunch of brown shirts who will beat the shit out of my critics if they dare to try to stop me from doing what I want to do. And if you're on his side, then you are not on America's side. It's pretty much that simple at this point. If you're still a member of the Republican Party, you're trash, and you have no business having your opinion anywhere in public except as a source of ridicule and rebuke. That's it.
And I'm grateful for the climate change protesters.
Me too.
Go watch some of those videos if you're feeling down. Go watch those climate change protests. It will make you feel better.
Donald Trump did claim that Democrats hate Jewish people, by the way. I do want to mention, I'll just steal this from someone on the Twitter, I forget who, the idea that Donald Trump invented a term for the Jexit, that it's Exodus for Jewish people.
I guess he never got out of 2 Corinthians.
I'm back in 2 Corinthians here. Yeah, no, and when quizzing him, just tell us your favorite verse in the Bible. Oh, that'd be unfair. They're all so good. They're all so very good. Just tell us one. No, they're all so good. I don't want to seem like I'm making favorites, but it's such a great book. It's such a good book. And he couldn't name Love Thy Neighbor.
He couldn't quote Jesus wept either.
Right. He couldn't quote anything. And then
That's
went
my
down.
favorite when I hear him talk like that is Jesus wept. I want to talk about Ilhan Omar briefly. which is connects back to my time at Brandeis. I tweeted about this, and I think it's an important point to make.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot at Brandeis University about Israeli politics. And one of the things I learned is that so much of our mainstream media is in the pocket of Likud, that there are voices in Israel, there are voices in Israeli politics that we in the United States never hear.
Yeah.
And Bibi Netanyahu is probably going to jail right now because he's as corrupt as Donald Trump. Let me put it that way. Don't forget that the Republican Party invited Bibi Netanyahu to address Congress while Barack Obama was president. There is a right-wing Zionist politics in this country that Donald Trump has glommed onto, that he thinks he can market himself to, or market to. And Jewish voters are not a monolith,
No.
any more than any other religious group are. They have a cultural connection to Israel. They have wide variety of opinions within and without Israel, and that ought to be respected.
Yeah.
And it's not because the media just covers one argument, which is a pro-Israel Zionist argument. Don't forget, Sarah Palin had a Israeli flag on her desk. You know, it is absolutely the same kind of crass pandering that went on when Congress had Bibi Netanyahu speak to Congress. So yeah, there are Israelis who are absolutely right-wing Republicans. There are Jewish people in the United States that are right-wing Republicans. There are Jewish Americans who are not that, and you can't paint anyone with that kind of wide brush. Ilhan Omar had a visit from some Orthodox Jews last week who were absolutely with her 100% in terms of supporting her, supporting what she said about AIPAC. And again, there's layers and layers and layers of opinions in there that I'm glossing over. But believing in the dignity of all human beings is what this man who spoke for this group of Orthodox Jews said. You know, what Judaism is respect for humanity and love for humanity, and the Palestinian people deserve respect as part of the human family. I mean, he was making those kind of statements, and he went and visited her and talked to her. So it's not a monolith, and it's not. And the people that are exploding her comments and making them what they are not are doing so in a crass, politically advantageous way,
right,
to make hay for their political opinion.
And if it weren't her, it'd be someone else.
No, exactly. They'll find some other way. She's an easy target because she wears a hijab.
Right.
And, we haven't talked about Tucker Carlson enough this week, and we haven't talked about Janine Pirro. Fox has to die. I am tweeting advertisers now myself and just letting them know I'm being very personal about it. I'm not calling for a boycott. I am simply saying to advertisers, I'm not going to buy your product because child brides is statutory rape.
Right. Right.
And if you want to close your eyes to that and still advertise on those shows and endorse that person, I'm not going to buy your product. And so I'm keeping it to my personal opinion and what I will buy and what I will shop for and what I will recommend to others. So I'm keeping it about me. But I'm ending every tweet I send with the word statutory rape because that's what this is about with Tucker.
And what happened to Tucker Carlson is he walks on the same eggshells that everyone else, I think, in the media walks on, which is there are a lot of people who want to let their hair down and be cool and hang with the rebels and say outrageous things after hours. When they're off the air, when they're on radio with Bubba the Love Sponge, when they're on the internet,
when they're on Twitter,
when they're rapping with the people, but they never want to be held accountable for those. There's this bright line between what I do in the 1 hour I'm on television and the other 23 hours in the day. And what I'm doing, those hours don't count. And there's this weird agreement among a whole lot of people across the media that that's the way it should be. That we're not going to hold each other accountable for the terrible things we say and do when the camera's not rolling, because then we're all screwed. And someone pulled the trigger on Tucker Carlson and said, nope, what we're going to do is we're going to go back and look at all your old shit. We're going to put it out there This is who you are. This is who you always have been. And your advertisers should really know that this is what they're buying with their money. And the reaction, I think, is entirely appropriate. But my question is, are we holding people accountable for the shit they've said and done now?
Yeah,
if that's
right.
the new rule, I really want to hear about it. Because I'd like to hear all about Charlie Sykes' years up in Wisconsin on the radio.
Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. But this week's Internet Kitty is another dog. This dog is named Pepper. He's a Belgian sheepdog, which makes him a crazy socialist. He's also a smart and agile runner, and he is so cute. You should go look at him at our Facebook page and website. Pepper is a cutie. You can send your Internet Kitty or other pet to our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com. Please use in the subject line the word kitty so that I get it. You can also write to both of us at proleftpodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job. Approximately 1% of our listeners support this podcast with a contribution, and you can too. See our website, proleftpod.com, for details. Both our PayPal and postal address information is there at proleftpod.com. Please share our show on Facebook or Twitter or any other social media, and thank you for doing that. Hey, Dricklass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties slept right through your stupid daylight savings time.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the bopping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2018.